Welcome back. You tuned into Inspired Afternoons with me, Mariam Mia, and it's Monday, so I have in my company, in very good company, I have health and wellness architect, Sister Sumaiya Hoosen, who are joining me, and we're going to carry on with inspiring our listeners in terms of getting healthy the wholesome way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Inspired Afternoon, Sister Sumaiya.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Mariam?
Doing well, and it's spring, and I'm really thrilled because for me, spring is rejuvenation, reawakening. It's growth. It's fresh beginnings for me. But I think for me, the only downside of spring is I'm holding a tissue is my allergies with all the pollen count increasing, and I have to confess, while we were busy setting up, I had to run to my handbag to go and get tissue. And then I'm telling my nose, please behave yourself during the duration of the broadcast, because sometimes, when I go into the sneezing fit and then the eyes get red and that. And then I said, okay, I have a health and wellness coach who is a pharmacist by profession. So maybe also part of being healthy is I'm going to put you in a spot, but part of that is because it's spring and I think people's allergies are heightened at this time, especially I'm told in Gauteng, we have one of the largest urban forests here. So people living in this area here also tend to suffer a lot more by ways of allergies. So somewhere in the wholesome healthiness as well as your experience as a pharmacist, if maybe we can just touch a bit upon managing our allergies as well, especially this time of the year as well. So I'm just going to leave that at the back of your mind for you to ponder and give us some sage advice on there before sometime during our discussion.
Well, maybe I can jump in right now. In terms of allergies, what the research has shown is that there's a drastic increase compared to previous generations, and the reason being is because we've tended to expose ourselves less to allergenic substances. So if you look at how we rear our babies nowadays, we tend to keep them very clean and very sterile. Whereas in days gone by, babies and kids were allowed to roam freely, play in the mud and in the dirt, play with puppies. There wasn't so much care regarding sterility and hygiene. And because there was more exposure to the natural environment and to the microbiomes that naturally occur in the environment, we developed an inherent resistance to it. What's happened nowadays is as we're moving into more sterile, hygienic, disinfected environment, we are removing contact with these naturally occurring substances. And that's why now our immune system doesn't recognize it. Whereas, like I say, in previous generations, our immune system could recognize it because it's seen it before. So it didn't regard it as anything harmful. It didn't need to mount a response to it. What's happened now is because of the urban jungle, the urban style of living, is that we've removed ourselves more from natural environments. So our immune system now recognizes these naturally occurring substances as something foreign. And that's when you have your inflammatory responses, your sneezing, your rhinitis, your et cetera, et cetera. And believe it or not, these things can be mitigated by diet. So increasing the variety in your diet by exposing your gut, because I don't know if I've mentioned on your program before, Miriam, is that 70% of your immune system is housed by your gut. So if you increase the exposure by what you eat, by eating a large variety of vegetables, especially your very colorful, deep, your deep purples like your blueberries and your red cabbage, your purple cabbage, those kind of vegetables, and your leafy greens, you're exposing your microbiome and you're exposing the immunity that sits in your gut to these substances more and more. And it becomes used to it. So now it doesn't recognize all these things. It doesn't get jittery. Anything comes in, you come into contact with something different. So that's one of the ways that you can temper your symptoms is by just increasing the diversity of home. I won't say homegrown because not everybody is fortunate enough to grow their own vegetables and herbs. But by increasing the diversity of your fresh vegetables and herbs are exceptionally important, and people don't use many fresh herbs. We tend to go for the bottled stuff. So fresh herbs and fresh vegetables, the more variety, the better. And over time, it does take time, obviously, like anything. Over time, you should, inshallah, see an improvement.
Jazakallah for that. Okay, so I love fresh herbs. Herbs are really easy to grow. So and even if you have space constraints, so if you're living in a small apartment or something like that, just on your windowsill, it doesn't take much space to grow basil, rosemary, thyme, coriander. Uh, all the herbs you can just grow because you don't need large plots of land or tract. So even if you live in confined places, bathroom window, kitchen window, good sunlight, you have your fresh herbs, spring onions, whatever it is. So it's relatively easy to grow. And also, it's very economical if you have your little pots and you grow them because they just keep on growing and growing and you're snipping and you're getting fresh up. So I'm a strong advocate for this. And thank you so much for that because just before we get onto this, well, this is all about health and well-being because even part of those allergies and that make up if we know what to do in terms of uh, creating a resistance to it. That's part of healthy living. So what I just that was my other concern when the whole sterilization, hand sanitizing came into effect and the very frequent sanitizing, especially for me, a mall shopping trip has become like really, really stressful in terms of I feel I'm losing whatever good bacteria is on the surface of my skin. So now I just put on gloves when I go because you 10 minutes in the store, you've just sanitized in the store you left here. So maybe in about an hour's trip, you must have sanitized maybe about 5 to 6 times. And I'm concerned because that's what exactly you say. You're creating a sterile environment for yourself where your body is no longer going to recognize naturally occurring bacteria here, which can be good to you in terms of building a resistance. So that is also my whole concern with this a super, I don't want to say over sanitizing, but I just say hyper or super sanitizing. What's your take on this?
Look, at the moment, I think it's. Sorry, I think there's an echo. So can
Is
you
there
hear
an
me,
echo?
Miriam? There's a bit
Yes, I
of an
can hear
echo
you.
there. Okay, then I'll go ahead. I think at the moment there is a necessity to do it. Unfortunately, we can't be dependent, or we can't look to the goodwill of others in terms of the precautions that they take because we don't know. So unfortunately, the scenario being as it is, I think it is necessary. But I think you can also put your mind to rest in the sense that from what we've seen, hand sanitizing doesn't actually get rid um, many types of bacteria. It's hand washing that does it. So I wouldn't be exorbitantly concerned regarding that at the moment. So that's my take on it.
Now let's get back to our house and our building, our internal home within ourselves and maybe externally as well. Today, what are we going to focus on? Last week we focused on movement. This week, what are we focusing on?
Okay, so I'll give you a choice. Let's see, which pillar do you want to address? You want to address stress less, or do you want to address love more? You choose.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's do this. Let's do stress less today. And let's do our finale, love more, because I think we should end on a positive uh, note like this. So
No.
let's do stress less.
Okay. So stress less, I think we're living in an environment where we have many different stresses. We're all operating under a certain basic level of stress, whether we recognize it or not. Like I said, the urban jungle that we're living in, though it may be far removed from the jungles of the past in which our ancestors lived in, where they were being chased by lions and tigers, or there were periods of drought and famine, we are being inundated with stresses almost chronically. So, Miriam, I'll give you a scenario. Say, for example, you were in the jungle and you came upon a lion, your cortisol level would immediately increase. You'd have a surge of adrenaline, and that was to make sure that you could run away as fast as you can. But as soon as you got to safety, you'd have your parasympathetic nervous system coming back into play, and then you'd be able to calm down. Your cortisol will get back to homeostasis. Adrenaline would reduce, and you'd be fine. So stress responses are genetically and inherently supposed to only last for very short periods of time. And the maximum period of time you're supposed to be in a relaxed or the rest and digest mode. Unfortunately, nowadays we are continually being exposed to stresses in terms of time constraints. I call the clock dictator. Just looking at the clock sometimes can evoke a stress response. Being stressed about your career issues or issues you may be having with your boss, with your colleague, with a work project, issues you may be having within your family. And what we do as human beings, unfortunately, is we tend to replay the negative in our minds. We don't often go to the positive. So every time you replay something, a negative experience, or you have a negative thought in your mind, your mind cannot decipher between what you're thinking and what you're actually physically experiencing. So if, for example, you got in your car this morning, Miriam, and you averted an accident. Somebody came out of nowhere and you had to swerve your car, but alhamdulillah, you are fine. But if throughout the rest of the day you have snippets of time where you keep replaying this incident, your brain doesn't recognize that you're not actually in that scenario. Your brain thinks you're in that scenario every time you think it or every time you replay it in your mind. So that means every time you have a negative thought or every time you replay a negative experience, you're going into a stress response. And how many of us are constantly replaying these events in our lives? I think most people, from the time that they wake up, they're thinking about failures, or they're thinking about negativity, or they're thinking about rushing. Nobody's just calm and starts their day off and continues their day in that way. So we have almost a constant surge of cortisol. Now, cortisol is your fight, flight, or freeze hormone. Um, but this hormone, it drives certain behaviors which are not healthy for us at all. It makes our bodies crave foods which are high in fat, sugar, and salt. The reason for this is like I say, if you go back to primitive man, in times of stress, he needed to gather, he needed to stockpile, he needed to make sure that he had everything that he needed. Maybe if there was a winter coming, or there was a famine coming, or there's a drought on the horizon. So we tend to crave foods that we know is going to last us, so that if we need to go into starvation mode, we are able to survive. It increases our appetite tremendously. It increases our belly fat. The fat around the midsection, which I'm sure you and most of your listeners know, is directly related to heart disease and many other diseases. And even if you don't eat more due to stress, you can still gain weight due to stress. This is because stress in itself decreases your metabolism. It also decreases your levels of testosterone. Now, testosterone is very necessary and very important to keep at a good rate of metabolism. Cortisol also spikes your insulin levels. So those that are diabetic or pre-diabetic, if you have these metabolic disorders, plus you're chronically stressed, it's just compounding the effect. But the good news regarding stress is that you can't have stress and relaxation can't live together. So they can't live in the same body together. So when you catch yourself feeling stressed or feeling anxious or having a negative thought, you have to try and immediately um, short circuit this by doing something that relaxes you, even if it's something like taking 5 deep belly breaths, or taking a quick walk or step out into the sunshine, whatever it means for you, but you need to get your stress responses down. So that's my feedback regarding stress. And you know how they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. I say, you know what, a chuckle a day tends to keep disease away. So try and chuckle and take everything with a pinch of humor, not a pinch of salt maybe, but a pinch of humor.
I love what you said. I'm going to remember. Every week, besides you giving us healthy and wholesome tips and advice and counsel, you always come up with those beautiful analogies and words and things like that. And I'm going to, fortunately, there's no copyright on them, I hope, because I love what you say, a smile a day or a chuckle a day keeps the doctor away. I'm going to remember that. And I think hubby will be able to see it, because if we chuckle more, we're not going to see him there in the practice. But anyway, I love that. And it's true, because laughter is the best medicine. And when you're stressed out, you don't see the lighter side of life. And it's so, like you say, you know what, we just sometimes need to laugh at the situation. And sometimes I'm in admiration of people when even any situation happens, then they see the lighter side in terms of, you know what, just smile it away, and whatever is happened. Let's see what we can salvage and move on. Because yes, I must confess, I'm one of those anxious people that overthink things. And once I processed an event or something, I agonize about it. So it's almost as if your mind goes into automatic drive, and you only forget about it. I mean, you only focus on the negativity, and it works in these different scenarios and things like this. So that's what I do. So how do you actually train your brain to sort of say, you know, it happened, you well, you healthy, you back to whatever, and be grateful for all the little things, the fact that you're breathing, you're alive, and you still have your health intact. How do you actually train your brain to then focus on the positive and stop agonizing over a situation, or allowing it to overtake you and replay over and over in your mind?
Well, that's a very valid point, and it sorry, there's an echo again, so it just disturbs me. Okay, that's fine now. That's a very, very valid question, and I'm glad that you asked it. But you put your finger right on it when you said, "How do you be grateful? How do you recognize?" So one of the ways in which you can stress less, and one of the ways that I recommend to my clients is I say, start a gratitude journal. When you say something like start a gratitude journal, people think it's this laborious effort. But I think we spoke the last time when we were speaking about sleep, and you mentioned how your mind doesn't get to rest. And I said, keep a book on your bedside, and whatever thoughts you have, just jot them down. In the same book, what I would suggest is that every morning when you start up in the morning, list three things, or even at night before you go to bed, just jot down just three things that you are grateful for. And then as you get used to this routine, and as you get into this pattern of doing this, I want you then to challenge yourself to start listing three things that you've never thought of before to actually be grateful for. So you mentioned something like going to the mall has become so strife with or fraught with anxiety for you because of all the hand sanitizing and etc. But the next time you go to a mall, for example, if somebody holds open a door for you, or if somebody gives you a smile, or if the teller just is friendly to you, those are things that you can be grateful for. And if you start to think and look at people in that scenario, and look at things, you mentioned spring earlier, fresh beginnings. I go outside and I hear the birds chirping, and I see the sun shining, and I feel the warmth on my skin, and I feel so grateful that I can feel all of this. There's people that can't feel it. We had a weekend now where we were busy in the garden and replanting our vegetable and herb patch. Those that follow on Facebook or follow me on Facebook would have seen it. But you know what? It's with simple steps. So things that you get grateful for every day. Another thing is to train your mind. It's very difficult to train your mind because as human beings, like I said, we're hardwired in that way. But people find that meditation works for them. I find it specifically a challenging meditation in and of itself, but I do find writing very therapeutic. So I find that when I'm getting a bit overwhelmed, if I have a pen and paper and I can just jot things down, because we're visual, human beings are very visual. So once you've got it out of your system and you see it written down, then you can deal with it. Then you can list pros and cons if there's something that you need to deal with. Otherwise, speak to somebody. When you voice it out and you get a different perspective, but make sure you voice it to the right person. And I think you know who your person is. Um, Another way that you can do, which I think is extremely, extremely remarkable is if there's somebody that specifically irks you or that specifically presses your buttons, and you have to encounter this person on a frequent basis. Whenever they tend to press that button of yours, I want you to think about something that you can be grateful for in that person. So even though there may be certain acts and certain behaviors that you may dislike in them, but there's always something that you can be grateful for in another human being. So I want you to try and do that. And these are just little ways that you can try and short circuit the way of negative thinking. But it takes time. You've got to become more aware of your thoughts. And the best way that I find to become aware of your thoughts is to constantly ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? And if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling sad or you're feeling anxious or you're feeling, then you got to ask yourself, why? Why am I feeling like this? What happened? And then you got to think, okay, what am I thinking right now? And that's how you start unraveling this whole circuit that's hardwired into our brains. Are you still there, Maria?
Taking notes. So I've noted everything down here, and every week you give me homework, and I have to diligently practice upon it. And this week I'm going to try to rewire the circuit so that I don't have that when something stressful happens or an occurrence happens, I can avoid it going and replaying in my mind and over analyzing it and just being sucked into that black hole of negativity and stress and that. I'm going to see if I can bypass that circuit with all those helpful tips you gave me. And like you say, if the source is not an event but a person, then I'm going to take your cue and I'm going to look at that person instead of seeing how the characteristics of the person annoys me or irritates me. I'm going to look at all the positives this person has actually done for me, and I'm going to focus on the positives and let the positives come to the fore. And like all of us, myself included, we all have negative qualities, and then just say, you know what, those are the negative qualities like mine, but the positives all forward. So then we can get less irritated and frustrated on somebody's negative characteristics. So I make a note. Easier said than done, but I'll definitely pursue and try because this is all about attaining a wholesome lifestyle. And I think a positive attitude definitely contributes to you being wholesome. So, inshallah, looking forward to next week's Love More. And I think this Love More, actually, this looking at people and focusing on a positive traits is also a precursor to Love More. So,
100%. And like you say, it's fresh beginnings. I know you've had a new grandchild, so it's really fresh beginnings for you. And I know that last week you spoke about how overwhelmed you were with the love that you were feeling. And I think also as the restrictions are lessening, we tending to enjoy more time with our family that we couldn't see for a long time. And yeah, it will be a wonderful way to end the show on. And knowing the person that you are, Miriam, to catch yourself in those thoughts, just write it down. Write it down. I know you love writing, so just keep that book with you all the time. Just write it down, and it's amazing what just having a smile on your face, it can fool your brain. Having a smile on your face has scientifically been proven to fool your brain. And before I
okay.
leave you, I have to show you this. This is what, can you see it?
Yes,
This is what
health
I'm
is
talking
wealth.
about.
No, I can
Not
read it. Health is wealth, not gold and silver. And I will remember this. Health is wealth. So, for all the gold
very
and silver in the world, it cannot replace good health. I just added a little to that, inshallah. And I'm
100%.
looking forward.
This is what I was telling you that I have in my kitchen. So today I thought let me bring it from my kitchen and show it to you and to the listeners. Yeah, so let's invest in our health. That's
Yes.
that's the that's the take home message.
Jazakallah, and looking forward to loving more next week. And until next week, may you be under the mercy and the protection of the Almighty. Assalamu
Ameen.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. And you have a lovely day, Mariam.
Well, do. Let's go for a short break and then we into our hashtag kindness and compassion segment.